Before Paris was the capital of fashion, art, romance, and revolution, it was simply a curve in a river. In the heart of Europe, the Seine traced a gentle arc around a small island, the Ile de la Cité. That island became the cradle of one of the most influential cities on earth. Over more than 2,000 years, Paris has been many things: a tribal settlement, a Roman town, a medieval stronghold, a royal capital, a revolutionary battlefield, an artistic magnet, and a modern world city. Its streets have witnessed saints and conquerors, kings and philosophers, poets and rebels. To tell the story of Paris is to tell a large part of the story of Europe itself. Long before there was a city, there were people along the Seine. Archaeological finds in the Paris basin show that humans lived in this region in prehistoric times, drawn by water, fertile land, fish, game, and easy movement along the river. Over centuries, hunting camps turned into settled communities. By the Iron Age, the area was part of a lively network of trade and tribal life. Around the 3rd century BC, a Celtic people known as the Parisii settled on and around the Ile de la Cité. They fished, traded, crossed the river, and built a prosperous community. The Romans would later call it Lutetia, but the tribe's name would endure. Paris would forever carry the memory of the Parisii. That early world changed dramatically in 52 BC, when Julius Caesar completed the Roman conquest of Gaul. The Parisii resisted, but Rome won. Under Roman rule, Lutetia was rebuilt as a proper provincial town. The center expanded from the island to the left bank, where the Romans laid out straight streets, built baths, temples, an amphitheater, and aqueducts. Roman law, Latin language, and urban life transformed the settlement. Lutetia was never Rome, of course, but it became a recognizable Roman city at the northern edge of the empire. Then came the long crisis of late antiquity. As the Roman world weakened, invasions increased. The people of Lutetia pulled back toward the defensible island in the Seine, building walls and relying on the geography that had first protected them centuries earlier. In the 5th century, as Attila the Hun threatened Gaul, Paris entered legend. According to tradition, a young woman named Geneviève urged the people not to flee. Her faith and courage became part of the city's identity, and she would later be honored as the patron saint of Paris. It was one of the earliest examples of a pattern that would repeat again and again: Paris under threat, and Parisians refusing to disappear. After the fall of the Western Roman Empire, power shifted to the Franks. In 508, King Clovis made Paris the capital of his kingdom, giving the city new political importance. Christianity also became central to its identity. Churches and monasteries multiplied, and the old Roman city slowly transformed into an early medieval capital. Its importance rose and fell over the centuries, but Paris never vanished. In the 9th century, Viking raids surged up the Seine, and the city was attacked again and again. The Great Siege of 885 and 886 became famous because Paris held out. Its defenders turned the city into a symbol of endurance. That reputation mattered. In 987, Hugh Capet became king of France, founding the Capetian dynasty, and Paris became the lasting heart of royal power. From that point on, Paris began to grow into something larger than a fortified town. During the High Middle Ages, the city expanded on both sides of the Seine. The right bank developed into a center of trade, markets, and crafts. The left bank became the home of schools, monasteries, and scholars. The island in the middle remained the symbolic core. In 1163, work began on Notre-Dame de Paris, one of the masterpieces of Gothic architecture. With its towers, rose windows, pointed arches, and flying buttresses, it announced that Paris was no longer merely important, it was magnificent. The city's mind grew as fast as its skyline. In the late 12th and early 13th centuries, the University of Paris emerged as one of the great centers of learning in Europe. The Latin Quarter took shape as students and teachers from across the continent gathered there, debating theology, philosophy, law, and logic. Names like Abelard and Thomas Aquinas became part of the intellectual life of the city. Paris was becoming the capital not only of kings, but of ideas. That is one reason its later nickname, the City of Light, would fit so well. Long before electric bulbs, Paris was a city of intellectual light. The 13th century brought even more glory. Under Louis IX, later St. Louis, Paris reached a high point of medieval prestige. He built the Sainte-Chapelle to house sacred relics, and its stained glass remains one of the wonders of the world. Yet Paris did not rise in a straight line. The 14th century brought catastrophe. The Black Death killed huge numbers of residents. The 100 Years' War between France and England shattered stability. Tax revolts broke out. In the 15th century, English forces occupied Paris. For a time, the city that saw itself as the center of France was under foreign control. But it was eventually reclaimed, and after the war, Paris began to recover. The Renaissance brought new energy. In the 16th century, French kings imported artistic and intellectual influences from Italy. Francis I patronized Renaissance culture and began turning the Louvre from a medieval fortress into a royal palace. Paris became more elegant, more ambitious, and more self-conscious as a cultural capital. But the same century was also torn apart by religious violence. Catholics and Protestants fought bitterly, and in 1572, Paris became the site of the street. Bartholomew's Day Massacre, one of the darkest episodes in French history. The city could produce beauty, scholarship, and refinement, but it could also erupt into bloodshed. Stability returned under Henry IV, one of the most important builders in Parisian history. He entered Paris in 1594 after years of civil war and set about repairing both the kingdom and the capital. He promoted major urban projects, including the Pont Neuf, the first bridge in Paris built without houses on it, and the Place Royale, now Place des Vosges. With Henry IV, Paris began to look more like a planned capital and less like an improvised medieval maze. In the 17th century, France became the dominant power in Europe, especially under Louis XIV, the Sun King. He moved the royal court to Versailles in 1682, which seemed at first like a blow to Paris. Politically, it was. Symbolically, too. Yet Paris remained France's economic, intellectual, and cultural center. It kept growing. New squares, monuments, churches, and boulevards reshaped the city. By the 18th century, Paris was the engine room of the Enlightenment. In salons, cafes, and printing houses, writers and thinkers like Voltaire, Rousseau, Diderot, and Montesquieu challenged authority and argued about reason, liberty, religion, science, and government. The city earned its reputation as the City of Light, not just because of illumination in the streets, but because ideas were burning there. Those ideas exploded into politics in 1789. On July 14, Parisians stormed the Bastille, and the French Revolution began. The event quickly became more than the fall of a prison. It became the collapse of an old order. In the years that followed, Paris was the center of revolutionary drama. Declarations of rights, crowds in the streets, the fall of the monarchy, the rise of the Republic, and the terror. The guillotine became a grim symbol of the age, and Paris became the stage on which modern politics revealed both its idealism and its cruelty. Out of that upheaval rose Napoleon Bonaparte. In 1804, he crowned himself emperor in Notre-Dame, a gesture so theatrical it still feels modern. Napoleon reshaped France through law, administration, education, and military power. Paris reflected his ambition. Triumphal monuments such as the Arc de Triomphe were conceived in this era, and the city once again became the capital of an empire. But empire was fragile. After military disaster and foreign invasion, Napoleon fell, and Paris entered the 19th century as a city of repeated revolutions, restorations, and reinventions. No transformation changed Paris more visibly than the one carried out under Napoleon III and Baron Haussmann in the mid-19th century. Haussmann tore through the old city, demolishing overcrowded medieval neighborhoods and replacing them with the broad boulevards, elegant stone apartment blocks, formal parks, and modern sewer systems that still define central Paris today. It was controversial then and remains controversial now. It improved hygiene, circulation, and state control, but it also erased old neighborhoods and pushed many poorer residents outward. Still, the Paris recognized around the world today, the grand avenues, long perspectives, and cream-colored facades is largely Haussmann's Paris. The late 19th century gave the city glamour as well as grief. After France's defeat in the Franco-Prussian War, Paris suffered siege and humiliation. Then came the Paris Commune of 1871, a radical uprising that was crushed with shocking violence. Yet within a generation, Paris entered the Belle Époque, a period of relative peace, prosperity, and cultural brilliance. The Eiffel Tower, built for the 1889 World's Fair, was mocked by some as a metal monstrosity. Eventually, it became the symbol of the city. Impressionist painters transformed modern art. Cabarets lit up Montmartre. The Metro opened in 1900. Paris became the capital of elegance, experiment, and spectacle. The 20th century was harsher. During World War I, Paris was threatened but not taken. After the war, it returned to life as a magnet for writers, artists, musicians, and exiles. Hemingway, Fitzgerald, Picasso, and many others passed through its cafes and studios. But in 1940, Nazi Germany occupied the city. Paris lived under occupation for 4 dark years. Jews were arrested and deported. Resistance networks operated in secret. In August 1944, the city rose up, and Free French forces entered Paris to liberate it. One of the great cities of Europe had survived again. After World War II, Paris modernized without surrendering its historical identity. The Fifth Republic, founded by Charles de Gaulle, restored political stability. The protests of May 1968 turned Paris into the center of a social and cultural rebellion that challenged authority, education, work, and tradition. In later decades, bold architectural projects such as the Centre Pompidou, the Louvre Pyramid, and the Grande Arche showed that Paris was still willing to shock, provoke, and reinvent itself. In the 21st century, Paris has remained both admired and tested. It adopted the euro, deepened its role in Europe, and continued to attract millions of visitors every year. At the same time, it has faced social inequality, tension in the suburbs, debates over identity, and the trauma of terrorism. The attacks of 2015 left deep scars, but they also revealed the city's resilience. In 2019, the fire at Notre-Dame horrified the world, yet the restoration effort became a global act of cultural devotion. By the middle of the decade, the cathedral had reopened, reminding everyone that Paris does not simply preserve history, it repairs it. The 2024 Olympic Games gave Paris another global moment. The city used the event not only to celebrate sport, but to modernize transport, improve public space, and present a greener urban future. By 2026, Paris stands at an interesting crossroads. It is still a museum of world history, still a capital of art and style, still one of the planet's most visited cities. But it is also trying to become cleaner, more bike-friendly, more sustainable, and more livable in the age of climate change and mass tourism. That may be the secret of Paris. It never stays only one thing. It is ancient, but never purely old. It is glamorous, but also political. It is beautiful, but never simple. From a small settlement on the Seine to a capital that has shaped politics, philosophy, architecture, literature, and art across the world, Paris has spent more than 2 millennia rewriting itself without losing its soul. The Seine still bends around the Ile de la Cité, just as it did in the beginning, and the city still rises from its banks like an argument between memory and invention. The story of Paris is not finished. Like the river that made it possible, it keeps moving.